Hey, good evening. It's Monday, November 14th. And thanks so much for being here for my channel, Everyday Talk 24/7. Great to start another week with you. Yesterday I did a video on Sunday, which I don't normally do, but it was just because of a really good theme of what Jesus is saying in Matthew's Gospel. Anyone who wants to save his life will lose it, contrary to the way that we think. But anyone who loses his life for the sake of Christ will save it. See, our desperate desire to hang on to our own stuff, our own anger, our own upset, our own reasons for being angry with other people, our own reasons for thinking the world would work better if it just went the way I wanted it to. Jesus is saying, if you hang on to that, if you try and keep that life, you will lose it. But if you can lose that mess and live for Him, you can save it. Now, Jesus' thoughts are not isolated to the Gospels. Paul is reflecting on exactly these same ideas and truths that Jesus is saying, just stating it a little bit differently. In Ephesians 4, we read this: "Surely you have heard of Christ and were taught in Him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life." That's that old way that Jesus is saying. If you hang on to it, you're going to lose it. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, get rid of it, die to it, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. In other words, the old life is trying to make you think that it's okay to hang on to it. As a matter of fact, you have to hang on to it, or life will go badly. When in fact, just the opposite is true. If you hang on to it, life will go badly. But life will go well if you let it go. And we talked about the illustration of leaves on the trees and leaves falling. That's an old life falling away. So picture this time of fall when you see the leaves floating by and falling to the ground. That's the first step in this new life that Jesus is calling us to. Because He says, you are told and encouraged to put off those things. Rather, to be made new in the attitude of your mind and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. See, Paul is saying in Ephesians exactly what Jesus is saying in Matthew. Put off that old garbage which is destroying you. Your desire to protect yourself rather than obey God. Your desire to hold on to your anger when you see other people being wrong or stupid or insensitive or sinful. And put on the new way of God to respond to those things not in weakness but in power. By the soft answer, turning away wrath. By having a spirit of forgiveness. By not hanging on to earthly stuff and evaluating people by how much stuff you get, but rather how can you honor God in relationships. Not what you can get, but what you can give to bring honor to God. When I put on these new ways, my focus is not what other people are telling me. I'm not a slave to them. Rather, I am a slave to God. And I'm entrusting myself to Him. Just as Peter calls us to. I am entrusting myself to Him. So yes, there's a step of faith, a step of courage here. I'm going to put off these things which I've clung so tightly to. I'm going to let them go just like the wind blowing the autumn leaves away. And I'm going to put on the glorious colors of spring in my life. There's a renewal, of rejuvenation, of rebirth. I'm going to live by those things. So I'm not going to steal any longer. I'm not going to take from people any longer. I'm not going to use words any longer which are designed to make me look good and other people look bad. I'm not going to be primarily concerned about defending myself. I'm going to be primarily concerned about defending the honor of God. And I will live a life of repentance and forgiveness. I will look at people through the eyes that Jesus calls me to be concerned about. Just as Paul says, as he closes this section in Ephesians 4, he says, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ forgave you. See that? Paul and Jesus saying the same thing. If we don't die, if we don't let go our desires, our wants, what we think our needs are, our view of sexual pleasure, our view of getting even with people, our view of taking care of ourselves, myself, and put on the righteousness of Christ, and entrusting Him to do for me far more than I ever could for myself. See, this is not about a position of weakness. This is not about rolling over and dying and giving up all pleasure. This is the gateway to true pleasure, to true joy, to true peace. Because it's the way of God. Jesus says, if you want to save your life, you're going to lose it. But if you lose your life for me, you will keep it. Paul says, this beautiful language, you were taught with regard to your former way of life, put off your old self, which is being corrupted with its deceitful desires. And they are deceitful. They're telling you, no, hang on, hang on. But see, that's just like a tree trying to hang on to its leaves. It doesn't work. But rather, be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. That is what this whole idea about dying to self is, and it's a powerful, liberating concept. Think about that. Again, love your thoughts and feedback, and check us out at everydaytalk247.com. If you haven't subscribed, turn on post notifications. These videos will come right to you. And Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow. And thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye.